Michael Johnson was not the kind of man who complained about life. He accepted his fate with quiet dignity, though inside his heart often carried more weight than he ever showed on his face. Every morning he rose before the sun, packed a small lunch, and walked Emma, his 8-year-old daughter, to school. After that, he went to work in one of the tallest glass buildings in New York City. He was the janitor. The man with the mop. The man no one looked at twice. To many, Michael blended into the background like the walls he scrubbed. He was not invisible because of who he was, but because of the job he carried. People rushed past him with shiny shoes, sharp suits, and important meetings, barely noticing the man who kept their floors clean and their offices shining. But Michael never let that bother him. His pride came from something far greater than a title or a paycheck. His pride was Emma. Emma was a bright little girl with soft brown hair that often curled at the ends, and eyes filled with dreams she didn't yet know how to name. She carried her worn-out teddy bear wherever she went, and she loved to hum songs that her mother once used to sing. Michael's wife, Michelle, had passed away when Emma was just a toddler. The loss was like a storm that ripped through his heart and left behind only silence. But even in that silence, Emma became his light. She was the reason he kept moving forward. Every floor he mopped, every trash can he emptied, every long night of aching back and tired feet, it was all for her. Their home was far from perfect. They lived in a small, run-down apartment on the edge of the city. The walls were cracked, the paint peeling, and the windows let in cold drafts during winter. The heater often broke down, and Michael would wrap Emma in blankets and boil water on the stove to keep the air a little warmer. Still, he tried his best to make it feel like home. He fixed what he could with his own hands, placed drawings Emma made on the walls, and told her stories before bed so she would dream of better worlds. Yet no matter how hard he tried, he could not ignore reality. His job barely paid enough to cover rent and food. Sometimes he skipped meals so Emma could eat more. Sometimes he wore the same shoes until they had holes, because buying new ones meant Emma would have to go without something she needed. Michael carried these burdens quietly. He never wanted Emma to feel the weight of their struggles. But children, even when small, could sense more than adults often gave them credit for. One evening, after a long day of scrubbing floors, Michael finished his shift later than usual. Emma had been waiting in the lobby, curled up on a wooden bench with her teddy bear in her arms. She had homework in her backpack, but she didn't complain. She simply waited for her father with patience beyond her years. When Michael finally approached her, his uniform damp with cleaning supplies, Emma stood up with a tired smile. "Daddy, you're done?" she asked. "Yes, sweetheart." "Sorry for making you wait so long," he said, brushing her hair back gently. "It's okay. I like waiting for you. I can watch the big lights outside," she said, pointing toward the glowing city streets beyond the glass doors. They walked home together, Michael holding her small hand tightly. The night air was sharp with cold, their breaths visible as they spoke. Emma's jacket was thin, one she had been wearing for 2 years. Though it was a size too small now, Michael had stitched and restitched it to keep it usable. When they finally reached their apartment, Emma paused outside before climbing the stairs. Across the street, she saw a grand house belonging to Robert Miller, the CEO of the very company where her father worked. The house looked like a palace compared to their apartment building. The lawn was neatly trimmed, lights glowed warmly inside, and outside in the yard was a doghouse big enough to fit Emma if she crouched. She looked at the doghouse for a long moment. Then, in a soft and innocent voice, she asked her father, "Daddy, Can I sleep in there tonight? In the doghouse? It looks warmer than our room. Michael froze. The words hit him like a knife to the chest. His throat tightened, and for a moment, he didn't know what to say. Emma was not trying to hurt him. She was not complaining. She had spoken with the honesty of a child, comparing what she saw with what she felt. He crouched down in front of her, placing his hands gently on her shoulders. "Emma," he whispered, forcing a smile through the ache in his chest, "you have a bed. You'll always sleep in your bed. Don't ever think you belong anywhere else." Emma tilted her head. "But the doghouse looks safe. It has a roof. And it doesn't feel so cold outside there." Michael hugged her tightly, burying his face in her hair. He didn't want her to see the tears that burned at the back of his eyes. "No, sweetheart. You belong with me. Always with me." That night, when he tucked Emma into her small bed, he wrapped extra blankets around her and placed the teddy bear beside her. She smiled sleepily, whispering, "Good night, Daddy." "Good night, Emma," he replied softly. But long after she fell asleep, Michael sat at the small kitchen table, staring at the flickering light bulb above him. His hands trembled as he held his face. The image of Emma pointing at the doghouse would not leave his mind. He thought about all the times she had been brave without knowing it. All the times she had stayed quiet when she was hungry, or smiled when she was cold, just so he wouldn't feel bad. She was only 8 years old, yet life was already asking her to carry burdens no child should ever know. Michael clenched his fists. He wanted to do more. He wanted to give her more. But no matter how hard he worked, the walls of poverty seemed to trap them in a corner with no way out. What he didn't know was that life sometimes listens in silence. And sometimes, even when it seems no one is watching, someone is. Earlier that evening, while Emma had been waiting in the lobby, a woman passing through the building had overheard her innocent question about the doghouse. That woman had recognized Michael as the janitor and felt something stir in her heart. She wasn't just any woman. She was someone connected to Robert Miller, the CEO himself. And Emma's small, innocent words were about to ripple into something far greater than Michael could ever imagine. The morning after Emma's innocent request, Michael woke up earlier than usual. His back ached from the hard chair he had slept on at the kitchen table. He had stayed awake most of the night, staring at the peeling paint on the walls, thinking about what his daughter had said. Her words, "Daddy, can I sleep in the doghouse?" still echoed in his ears. He shook his head as if he could chase away the memory, but it clung to him like a shadow. More than exhaustion, it was helplessness that weighed him down. A father should be able to give his daughter warmth, comfort, and safety. Instead, Emma thought the home of a stranger's dog seemed better than her own room. Michael rubbed his tired eyes, stood up, and moved quietly through the small apartment. Emma was still asleep in her little bed, curled under blankets with her teddy bear in her arms. Her cheeks were pink from the cold, but she was smiling faintly in her dreams. That smile gave Michael strength. "I'll get through this," he whispered to himself. For her. He got ready for work, washed his uniform by hand, and wore it still damp because there wasn't enough time for it to dry completely. He brewed weak coffee, the only thing he could afford that week, and ate a piece of bread with no butter. The rest of the loaf he saved for Emma's breakfast. By the time they left the apartment, the city streets were already alive with people rushing to buses, trains, and cars. Emma held her father's hand tightly as they walked to school. She was cheerful, talking about the story she wanted to write in class and how she hoped her teacher, Mrs. Jennifer Clark, would like it. Michael listened with a smile, nodding at every detail, though his mind was heavy with worries. He dropped Emma off at the school gates, kissed her forehead, and promised, "I'll be here when school ends." Then he went straight to work. The corporate building sparkled in the morning light. Its glass walls reflected the rising sun, making it look almost like gold. To outsiders, it was a place of dreams, where important decisions were made and fortunes were built. But for Michael, it was simply the place he cleaned day and night. Inside, men and women in formal clothes hurried to elevators, holding coffee cups and files. Some greeted each other warmly, others barely had time to look around. Few noticed the janitor pushing his cleaning cart down the hall. But Michael didn't mind. He focused on his work. He polished the lobby floors until they shone, cleaned the glass doors until they were spotless, and emptied the trash bins that filled up quickly each morning. Yet what he didn't know was that his life had already begun to shift. Because the night before, when Emma had been sitting in the lobby, someone had heard her words. Her name was Jennifer Clark, the same kind-hearted teacher Emma admired. She had stayed late at the building to meet her brother, Robert Miller, the CEO. Jennifer often visited Robert to remind him of family dinners and to make sure he didn't drown himself completely in work. As she walked through the lobby, she noticed a little girl sitting alone on the bench, hugging a teddy bear. Jennifer had paused for a moment, curious. She loved children and could never walk past one without at least offering a smile. That was when she heard Emma's soft voice. "Daddy, can I sleep in the doghouse? It looks warmer than our room." The words had pierced Jennifer's heart. She stopped in her tracks, turned, and saw Michael crouching down in front of his daughter. She watched the way he hugged her, the quiet pain on his face, and the way he reassured the girl with gentle love. Jennifer had recognized Michael. She had seen him many times, always mopping floors and carrying bags of trash. She had never spoken to him before, but she knew his face. And now, for the first time, she saw more than just a janitor. She saw a father trying with everything he had to protect his daughter from the harshness of life. Jennifer had left the building silently that night, but she didn't forget what she heard. The image of Emma's small voice asking to sleep in a doghouse stayed with her. Later that day, Jennifer visited her brother Robert in his office. Robert was a tall man in his 50s, sharp and serious, known in the city for his business mind. He was respected, sometimes feared, but not always loved. Work was his world, and he rarely looked beyond the walls of his company. Jennifer entered his office without knocking, as she often did. "Robert," she said firmly, "do you know one of your employees' children thinks a doghouse is warmer than her own bed?" Robert looked up from his desk, confused. "What are you talking about?" Jennifer walked closer, her eyes full of determination. "Your janitor, Michael Johnson. I overheard his daughter last night. She asked him if she could sleep in the doghouse outside your house." Robert blinked, surprised. "That's absurd." "Why would she? Because they're poor, Robert. Because her father is working himself to the bone here, and she still feels cold in her own home." I saw the look on his face. "Do you know what it's like for a child to say something like that? For a father to hear it?" Robert leaned back in his chair, silent. He was not a man easily shaken, but Jennifer's words hit him harder than any business report ever could. He pictured the man he had seen in passing, the janitor with tired eyes and quiet steps, and suddenly he wanted to know more. Michael knew nothing of the conversation happening in the CEO's office. He continued his work as usual, wiping down tables in the break room, fixing a leaky sink in the bathroom, and carrying heavy trash bags to the back alley. Every movement was heavy, but his heart was heavier. At lunchtime, he sat on a small stool in the supply room, eating a sandwich he had packed from home. He thought of Emma's smile at school that morning. At least she was happy there. At least she had her books and her teachers. If only he could give her more. Sometimes he dreamed of saving enough money to move into a better apartment, with a heater that worked and walls that didn't let in the cold wind. But every time he tried to save, something came up the rent: Emma's shoes, medicine, or a broken pipe at home. Dreams, it seemed, were always slipping from his hands. Still, Michael carried on. Because giving up was not an option. That evening, when he came to pick Emma up from school, Mrs. Jennifer Clark called him aside. Michael looked nervous, thinking Emma might have done something wrong. But instead, Jennifer smiled kindly. "Mr. Johnson," she said gently, "Emma is a wonderful girl. She tells stories with so much imagination. You should be proud of her." Michael's face softened, and he nodded. "Thank you, ma'am. She's my little angel." Jennifer hesitated, then added, I want to ask you something. Would you be free to meet tomorrow after work? There's something important I'd like to discuss with you." Michael was puzzled but agreed. He didn't know that this meeting would become the doorway to a future he had never dared to imagine. And he didn't know that the quiet, innocent words of his daughter had already reached the ears of the most powerful man in the building. The next day arrived with a gray sky and a soft drizzle that made the city streets glisten. Michael left the apartment early, holding an umbrella over Emma as they walked to school. His shoes were damp from the puddles, and his uniform still smelled faintly of cleaning supplies. But he walked tall, because Emma was skipping beside him, humming a tune that made the world feel lighter. After dropping her at the school gates, Michael hurried to work. He didn't want to be late, though in truth no one would have noticed if he was. Janitors were expected to be invisible, always there, yet unseen. Whispers of concern inside the tall glass building. Michael went about his duties as usual. He pushed his cart, mopped the marble floors, and straightened chairs left askew in the conference rooms. Yet, all the while, his thoughts kept circling back to Jennifer Clark's words from the previous day. "Would you be free to meet tomorrow after work?" She had spoken kindly, with a warmth that made Michael uneasy but curious. Teachers were busy people. Why would she want to meet him, a janitor? He wondered if Emma had said something unusual in class or if Jennifer simply wanted to help. The hours passed slowly. When lunch came, Michael sat in the supply closet again, chewing on his plain sandwich. His co-workers passed by, laughing or chatting, but Michael stayed alone. He didn't mind solitude, it was where he found his strength, but today, he felt a stir of nervousness. Unbeknownst to him, others in the building had also begun to whisper. The CEO himself had been asking subtle questions. Robert Miller was not the kind of man who took personal interest in his janitorial staff. Yet after Jennifer's visit, curiosity had bloomed in his mind. "Michael Johnson," Robert muttered to himself while scanning employee records. A single father. Worked for years without missing a day. Took extra shifts whenever offered. Salary, barely above minimum. No complaints filed. No requests for help. A man who lived quietly in the shadows. Robert leaned back in his chair. The image of a little girl asking to sleep in his doghouse kept replaying in his head. He didn't like the way it made him feel. It reminded him of his own childhood struggles before he had built his empire. "Maybe it's time," Robert whispered, "that I look beyond the numbers." After the shift, by the time evening came, Michael's muscles ached from bending and scrubbing. He finished polishing the lobby floors and stacked his supplies neatly in the closet. Then, as promised, he walked to Emma's school. Emma ran into his arms, her backpack bouncing. "Daddy," she squealed. He hugged her tightly, then glanced toward the school steps. There stood Mrs. Jennifer Clark, smiling warmly. She held an umbrella, waiting for them. "Mr. Johnson," she greeted. "Thank you for coming." Michael shifted uncomfortably, adjusting his worn jacket. "Of course, ma'am. I hope Emma hasn't caused any trouble." Jennifer laughed softly. "Trouble? She's a joy to have in class." "No, I wanted to speak with you about something else." They walked together toward a small cafe near the school. Emma sipped hot chocolate while Jennifer and Michael sat across from each other. The cafe smelled of coffee beans and fresh bread, and for once, Michael felt like he belonged somewhere outside his usual world. "Mr. Johnson," Jennifer began gently, "last night I overheard Emma when she was waiting for you in the lobby. She mentioned the doghouse outside my brother's house." Michael's cheeks flushed. Shame tightened his chest. He opened his mouth to apologize, but Jennifer raised her hand kindly. "You don't need to explain. I saw the way you comforted her. I saw how much love you carry for her." But her words broke my heart. "No child should ever feel like a doghouse is warmer than her own home." Michael lowered his gaze, gripping his cup tightly. "I do my best," he murmured. "She never complains. But sometimes my best, it isn't enough." Jennifer leaned forward. "That's why I wanted to talk. My brother Robert, he's the CEO of your company. He's a man with resources, and lately he's been thinking about ways to help employees who struggle quietly. I told him about you and Emma." Michael stiffened. "You told him?" "Yes," Jennifer said softly. "Because I believe you deserve help. You're not asking for it, but sometimes the strongest people are the ones who need it most." Michael's pride wrestled with his desperation. He had never begged, never asked for favors. Yet the thought of Emma shivering again in the cold, asking to sleep in a doghouse, was unbearable. "What exactly does he want to do?" Michael asked carefully. Jennifer smiled. "He wants to meet you. And Emma. Tomorrow evening, if you're willing." Michael blinked in shock. The CEO himself? Why would a man like Robert Miller care about a janitor? "I don't know," Michael said slowly. Jennifer reached across the table, her voice kind but firm. "Sometimes life sends people when you least expect it. Don't turn away from an open door, Mr. Johnson." That night, as Michael tucked Emma into bed, his mind spun with doubts. What if Robert only wanted to mock him? What if this was just a charity act to ease the CEO's conscience? Could he trust a man who lived in wealth and power, while he struggled to keep the lights on? But then Emma looked up at him with her innocent smile. "Daddy, today was the best day. Mrs. Clark bought me hot chocolate. Can we go there again?" Michael kissed her forehead. "We'll see, sweetheart." He sat at the kitchen table again after she fell asleep, staring at the flickering bulb. For years, he had carried the weight of the world alone. But maybe, just maybe, it was time to let someone else share the load. By midnight, his decision was made. The next evening, Michael put on his cleanest shirt, though it was still faded from years of use, and held Emma's hand as they approached the grand house of Robert Miller. The mansion stood tall, glowing with warm lights. The trimmed hedges and shining cars outside seemed like a different world. Emma's eyes widened. "Daddy, it's so big," she whispered. Michael squeezed her hand nervously. "Remember, sweetheart, we're just guests. Be polite." Jennifer greeted them at the door, her smile easing some of Michael's tension. She led them into a cozy sitting room where Robert waited. The CEO stood tall, his presence commanding, yet his eyes softened when he saw Emma clutching her teddy bear. "You must be Emma," Robert said gently, kneeling slightly to her level. "I've heard so much about you." Emma blinked, shy but curious. "You're the man with the doghouse," she whispered. Robert chuckled warmly. "Yes, I suppose I am." He glanced at Michael, whose face burned with embarrassment, but Robert's gaze carried no mockery, only thoughtfulness. They sat together, and Robert listened as Michael quietly shared his story. The struggles. The long nights. The small victories. He spoke with humility, never bitterness, though his voice trembled when he admitted Emma sometimes went cold. Robert said little, only nodding as his mind turned. He had built his empire by seeing opportunities where others saw none. And now, in front of him, he saw something greater than business. He saw loyalty, sacrifice, and love. By the end of the evening, Robert leaned forward, his eyes steady. "Michael," he said firmly, "you've given everything for your daughter, and you've asked for nothing in return. But I believe no one should fight this hard alone. I want to help. Not as charity, but as recognition of the strength you've shown." Michael's breath caught. His hands shook slightly. "Help, how?" Robert smiled faintly. "Tomorrow, we'll discuss details. But for now, take comfort in knowing this: Emma will never have to think of a doghouse as her safe place again." Michael stared at him, speechless. His heart pounded as he looked at Emma, who was happily sipping the cocoa Jennifer had made. For the first time in years, Michael felt something he had almost forgotten: hope. The following morning, Michael woke earlier than usual. His mind had barely rested the night before. He had replayed every word Robert Miller spoke in that grand house, every kind glance Jennifer gave, every little giggle Emma made as she sipped cocoa. For years, Michael had fought battles no one noticed. And now, suddenly, the most powerful man in the company wanted to help him. It felt like standing at the edge of a cliff. One step could lead to freedom, or one slip could send him crashing. Still, when Emma stirred in her bed and whispered, "Daddy, do we see the nice man again today?" he knew the answer. "Yes, sweetheart," he said softly, brushing her hair from her face. "We'll see him again." That evening, after his janitor shift, Michael and Emma returned to the Miller mansion. This time, Michael felt less nervous, though his clothes were still simple. Emma had drawn a picture during school, a house with a sun above it, two people holding hands, and a doghouse off to the side. She clutched the paper proudly as they walked to the door. Jennifer welcomed them again, her smile like a warm light in the doorway. "Emma, I've been waiting for you. Did you draw something for me?" Emma nodded shyly and handed her the picture. Jennifer gasped softly, admiring it. "This is beautiful. You're an artist in the making." Emma giggled, hiding her face in her teddy bear. Inside, Robert sat by the fireplace, reviewing documents. When he saw Michael, he rose and extended a hand. Michael hesitated but shook it firmly. Thank you for coming back, Robert said. I know it isn't easy to accept help. Michael nodded quietly. I want what's best for Emma. That's all. Robert's expression softened. And that's exactly why you're here. They sat together again, Emma happily sketching with crayons Jennifer provided, while the adults spoke. Michael, Robert began, I built my company from nothing. People see the wealth now, but they don't see the boy who grew up in a cold room, wondering if dinner would come. I know what it feels like to be invisible. Michael's eyes widened slightly. He had never imagined Robert Miller, the man with polished shoes and an empire of businesses, had once known hunger. Robert continued, You've worked here for years, and not once have you asked for favors. You've been loyal, consistent, and invisible only because people choose not to see. But I see you now. And I want to change things. Michael swallowed hard. With respect, sir, I don't want charity. Emma needs stability, not pity. Robert nodded firmly. This isn't charity. It's recognition. You deserve more than what you've been given. Jennifer placed a gentle hand on Michael's arm. Sometimes, strength is not in carrying everything alone, but in allowing others to lift with you. Michael looked at Emma, who was drawing another picture this time of herself, her father, and two smiling adults standing beside them. His chest tightened. What do you suggest? He finally asked. Robert leaned forward. First, a better home. I own several apartments near the city. They are safe, warm, and close to Emma's school. I want you and your daughter to move into one free of rent. Michael's jaw tightened. Free? I can't accept that you can, Robert interrupted gently, because it's not a gift. It's an investment in someone who has given his all to this company without complaint. You've earned it through your loyalty. Michael hesitated, but Robert wasn't finished. Second, I want to promote you. Not as a janitor, but as a building supervisor. You know this place better than anyone. You'll oversee maintenance teams, organize schedules, and manage supplies. It means more responsibility, but also a far better salary. Michael blinked, stunned. A supervisor? He had never even dreamed of such a position. And third, Robert added, glancing at Emma, I want to support Emma's education. Jennifer has told me about her talents. I'll ensure she has everything she needs: books, supplies, even opportunities to attend programs that can help her grow. Michael's throat tightened. For a moment, words refused to come. Finally, he whispered, Why? Why me? Robert's voice was steady, but his eyes carried a weight of memory. Because once, someone helped me when I didn't deserve it. That hand changed my life. I've been waiting for the right moment to pass it on. And last night, when your daughter spoke about a doghouse being warmer than her room, I knew. It was time. Michael lowered his head, his hands trembling. I don't know what to say. Jennifer smiled softly. Say yes. For Emma. Emma looked up from her drawing, tilting her head. Daddy? Does this mean we can have a warmer house? Michael pulled her close, hugging her tightly. His eyes glistened as he kissed her hair. Yes, sweetheart. It means that. Robert leaned back, watching them. For all his business victories, few moments had ever felt as satisfying as this one. Within a week, arrangements were made. Michael and Emma packed their few belongings into old boxes. Neighbors watched curiously as movers sent by Robert helped carry the items. Emma clapped with excitement when she saw the apartment Robert provided. It wasn't a mansion, but it was clean, spacious, and warm. The walls were freshly painted, the windows sealed tightly against the cold, and the heater worked perfectly. Emma ran from room to room, squealing with delight. "Daddy! Look! My own room! And the window shows the school," she cried, pressing her face against the glass. Michael stood in the living room, overwhelmed. For the first time in years, he didn't feel trapped by poverty's walls. He felt hope expanding around him like sunlight through open curtains. When Emma fell asleep that night in her new bed, Michael sat quietly, tears sliding down his face. He whispered into the silence, "Thank you, thank you." Days turned into weeks, and Michael stepped into his new role as supervisor. At first, he felt nervous managing others, but soon, his natural diligence shone through. He organized cleaning teams with efficiency, handled maintenance requests quickly, and kept the building in top condition. His co-workers noticed the change. Some were surprised, others inspired. Many respected him more now that his leadership showed the strength he had always carried quietly. With the higher salary, Michael was able to buy Emma new clothes, better food, and even small treats she had never known before, like a birthday cake with her name on it. Yet despite the changes, Michael remained humble. He still worked hard, still greeted everyone kindly, and still reminded Emma never to take blessings for granted. Emma blossomed in school. With Jennifer's guidance and Robert's support, she joined art programs where her drawings amazed teachers. She made new friends, shared stories, and carried herself with more confidence. But no matter how many crayons or paints she received, her favorite subject was still drawing her father. She often sketched him holding a mop like a hero's sword, smiling down at her. One evening, she gave Michael such a drawing. "You're my superhero, Daddy," she said. Michael's throat tightened. "And you're my reason to keep fighting, Emma." Meanwhile, Robert often invited them for dinner. Watching Emma chatter happily at his table reminded him of the family warmth he had long ignored in pursuit of success. He realized that helping Michael and Emma wasn't just about lifting them, it was also about healing a part of himself he had forgotten. Jennifer saw it too. She smiled each time Robert softened when Emma hugged him goodnight. She whispered to Michael once, "You've changed him more than he's changed you." Michael only smiled humbly, holding Emma's small hand. One evening, as the sun set over the city, Robert stood with Michael outside the apartment he had provided. "You've worked hard, Michael," Robert said. "And I see more in you every day. But remember this, what we've built here isn't just about work. It's about family. Your daughter reminded me of something I had forgotten. Love is the true wealth." Michael nodded, his eyes moist. "And you reminded me that kindness still exists in this world. I promise I'll never waste what you've given us." They shook hands, not as boss and employee, but as men bound by respect. From that day forward, Michael carried not just the weight of responsibility, but also the strength of knowing he and Emma were no longer alone. The days following their move into the new apartment felt almost unreal to Michael. For years, he had grown used to dim rooms, broken heaters, and constant worry about rent. Now, each morning, sunlight streamed warmly through the windows, and Emma woke with a smile instead of shivers. Still, Michael reminded himself daily that this blessing came with responsibility. He was determined not to let pride or comfort weaken his work ethic. Every morning, he left for his new position as building supervisor with quiet dignity, returning home each evening with stories for Emma about the people he helped. And each night, When Emma knelt by her bed to whisper a small prayer of thanks, Michael felt his heart overflow. At school, Emma blossomed in ways Michael had never imagined. She had once been the quiet girl in faded clothes, sitting at the back of the classroom. Now, with clean uniforms, art supplies, and the confidence that came from stability, she spoke up, laughed with friends, and shared her talents proudly. Her teacher noticed the change. One afternoon, she called Michael aside. "Mr. Carter," she said kindly, "Emma has a gift. Her drawings tell stories far beyond her age. With the right guidance, she could achieve something remarkable." Michael listened with pride and humility. "Thank you, ma'am. She's all I've got, and I'll do everything I can to give her a chance." When Emma came running to him that day with a drawing of their new apartment complete with flowers on the window ledge, Michael felt a lump in his throat. She sees beauty now, he thought. She's no longer drawing only survival. Meanwhile, Robert Miller's bond with the small family deepened. What had started as an act of compassion slowly became a source of personal healing. Robert had always lived in the shadow of wealth and responsibility. His days were filled with meetings, contracts, and numbers. But evenings with Michael and Emma introduced him to something he had long forgotten: warmth without condition. Emma would often climb into his lap during visits, showing him her drawings or asking him endless questions about his office. At first, Robert had been stiff, unsure how to respond to a child's open affection. But little by little, he softened. One night, Emma asked him innocently, "Do you ever get lonely in your big house?" The question pierced Robert more deeply than he expected. He paused, then admitted softly, "Sometimes, yes." Emma reached out and squeezed his hand. "You can come to our house. It's small, but it feels happy." Jennifer, who had been listening, smiled gently. Michael lowered his eyes, humbled by his daughter's innocent kindness. Robert, however, swallowed hard and nodded. "Thank you, Emma. That means more than you know." Of course, change did not erase every struggle. Michael's new role came with pressure. He had to manage teams of workers, handle complaints, and maintain order in a building filled with different personalities. Some employees doubted him at first. "He's just a janitor who got lucky," one whispered. But Michael never argued. He let his actions speak. He arrived early, worked alongside his team, and treated everyone with respect. Slowly, even the doubters began to admire his fairness and dedication. One evening, after resolving a difficult plumbing issue that others had ignored, one of his workers clapped him on the back. "You're not just a boss, Carter. You're one of us." Michael smiled faintly. That was enough. At home, he never spoke of the challenges to Emma. To her, he was simply Daddy, the superhero. And that was the title he cherished most. Months later, Jennifer visited Emma's school during an art showcase. The walls were lined with colorful pictures drawn by children. But when Jennifer stopped in front of Emma's work, her eyes widened. It was a picture of a little girl holding her father's hand while standing in front of a doghouse. Above them, a man in a suit stood smiling, and behind him shone a tall, bright house. The message was simple but powerful: kindness can change lives. Jennifer took a photo and showed it to Robert that evening. "Look at this," she said softly. "She remembers. And she tells the story through art." Robert stared at the drawing for a long time. Something stirred within him, a memory of the day he had decided to help. He realized then that Emma's talent wasn't just in lines and colors, but in capturing truth. He turned to Jennifer. We need to make sure her gift doesn't fade. Within weeks, Robert arranged for Emma to attend a weekend art program at a respected academy. When Michael first heard of it, he shook his head. "I can't afford something like that." Robert placed a hand on his shoulder. "You don't have to. Let me handle it. Consider it part of the promise I made." Michael hesitated, but when Emma's eyes lit up with hope, he nodded. "All right." For her, the art program became Emma's sanctuary. She learned new techniques, met other young artists, and discovered how to express her imagination in ways she had never known before. Michael watched from the sidelines, bursting with pride each time she returned home with new sketches. He pinned her best work on the apartment wall, turning their living room into a gallery of her dreams. One night, Emma hugged him tightly and whispered, "Daddy, one day I'll paint a big house for us. With flowers and a garden and no cracks in the walls." Michael kissed her forehead. "Sweetheart, you already gave me the biggest house right here." He tapped his chest. "You filled it with joy." As the seasons passed, Robert found himself transformed as well. The once distant CEO now made time to visit Michael and Emma often. He would sit at their modest dinner table, listening to Emma's endless stories, or walk with Michael late at night, sharing reflections about life. Jennifer noticed the change. One evening, as she and Robert watched Emma perform at a small art show, she whispered, "She gave you back your heart, didn't she?" Robert nodded quietly. "Yes. And Michael reminded me what real strength looks like. Not power, not money sacrifice." Jennifer smiled. "Then maybe this isn't just about helping them. Maybe it's about all of us healing together." One snowy evening, about a year after their first meeting, Robert invited Michael and Emma to his mansion once more. This time, there was no nervousness, no hesitation. They entered like family. Dinner passed with laughter, stories, and warmth. Afterward, Robert stood, holding a folder in his hand. "Michael," he began, "when I first met you, you were cleaning floors. Now, you manage an entire building with respect and dignity. You've proven not only your worth but your heart." He handed Michael the folder. Inside were papers outlining a partnership. "I want you to oversee a new housing project," Robert explained. "Affordable, safe apartments for families in need. Who better to lead it than someone who knows the struggle firsthand?" Michael's eyes widened. "Me? Run a project like this?" Robert smiled. "Yes. Because you will build not just walls, but hope. And you won't do it alone, we'll do it together." Michael's hands shook as he closed the folder. For a moment, he couldn't speak. Then he whispered, "You've already changed my life. Now you're asking me to help change others. I don't know if I'm worthy." Jennifer spoke gently. "You are, Michael. Because you never forgot where you came from. That makes you the best man for the job." Emma, sitting nearby, clapped her hands. "Daddy will build houses for children like me." Everyone laughed, but in that moment, Michael realized it was true. His story had come full circle. From that day forward, Michael not only cared for Emma but also for countless families who needed a second chance. He poured his heart into the housing project, ensuring no child would ever have to beg for warmth in a doghouse again. Emma continued to grow, her art gaining recognition and her spirit shining brightly. She often told her father, "We're building dreams, Daddy, yours, mine, and theirs." Robert and Jennifer remained by their side, not as distant benefactors, but as family. Together, They formed a bond built not on wealth or obligation, but on love and shared humanity. And whenever Michael looked back, he remembered the night his daughter's innocent plea had opened a door he never expected. Years later, Emma's art would hang in galleries, telling the story of a single dad, a cold night, and the kindness of a CEO who chose to see what others ignored. Michael, standing proudly at her side, knew one truth above all: it wasn't charity that had saved them. It was compassion. And compassion, when shared, had the power to rewrite destinies.